Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing the Can You Adapt It tag, which I was tagged in by Walker Wright 7. I'll link his video down below in the description. And this one is all about adaptations. And it was a little hard to think of answers for some of these because some of them I had the same answers, but I've tried to get them pretty different. So the first question is favorite book adaptation. So there's a couple of things that I thought about immediately, and of course there's always Lord of the Rings, which was a fantastic adaptation. But what I went with, because it's actually one of my favorite movies of all times, and though I have not read the book it is adapted from, it is an adaptation, and that is Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Not a ton of people, I feel like, have seen this movie. It is fantastic. It's an extremely dry humor that's kind of like a satire of the Cold War, but despite the incredibly dry humor, there are just so many laughs, and it's just so ridiculous. The whole premise of it's really ridiculous. The acting is fantastic. It is, I feel like, such an underrated movie. I love this movie so much, and I definitely think if you like comedy and you're good with kind of a drier satire, definitely check it out because it is one of my favorite movies of all time. I do want to read the book it's based off of at some point. I just, for whatever reason, have never gotten around to it at this point. But that's what I'll go with for number one. Question two is your least favorite adaptation, and the one that immediately comes to mind for me is The Count of Monte Cristo, because the movie probably wasn't actually that bad, but it just changed so much. The ending was completely different. So much about it was completely different, and it just didn't even feel like I was watching an adaptation of the story. It looked like it was just, very loosely based on the book, and I love The Count of Monte Cristo. It's one of my favorite all-time novels, so I just did not care too much for the adaptation for those reasons. Number three, if you could adapt any book, what would it be? Now, this one I had to think about because normally I would have said, Wheel of Time, but that's actually in the works, which is awesome. And there's definitely plenty of Sanderson things I could probably choose as well. I know most of his stuff is kind of optioned and something will happen at some point. So what I thought actually would be really, really cool because of the type of story would be the Lightbringer series. Lightbringer, just when I was reading it, it's so visual. The use of Luxon, which is different colors of light and all of that. Some of the visuals in there, there's just a ton that I think would be really, really cool to see, either in a movie or a TV show. I definitely feel like you could take the books and condense the plot and make it a little bit quicker, basically, to still kind of fit it in. Maybe change a few things. That's a series I wouldn't be terribly mad if some things changed, because there were some questionable things in there, but I really enjoyed the series overall, and it's just so inherently visual with the style of magic and so many things, so I think that would be really cool to see on screen. So I went with that instead of the Sanderson one. So those of you who aren't big on Sanderson, there you go. I didn't answer it. Number four, what's one adaptation that was portrayed perfectly? So for this one is probably something else I could have said one of my favorite adaptations, but one of just the absolute best and most perfect adaptations for me was Good Omens. I saw the show first, and then I read the book, and then saw the show again. And I've talked several times about how much I love both the book and the show. And the show just, it didn't do literally every single thing exactly the same. There was a lot of attention to detail, though, in the show, and it complemented the book very, very well. There were some changes, but everything fit, and it made for a fantastic adaptation that just really didn't feel like it took away any of the elements of the book. I loved reading the book. I loved watching the show. It was really great either way. All right, number five. If you could star in any adaptation, what would it be? I would love to be like an extra or like a tiny little bit part in the Wheel of Time show. I know that's not going to happen, and it does say star in any adaptation, which I don't think I'm a talented enough actor, and I wouldn't want to ruin something I really love. But I would love to just be like miscellaneous innkeeper #1 or something, dumb from Wheel of Time. There's tons of little characters. Even if there's no alliance, I just think that'd be cool. I would never forget that. That would be awesome. I would have totally applied too if I lived in Prague, where they were filming most of it, because they did ask for extras, and I wanted to, but yeah, that wasn't going to work out. But it would be awesome. That's definitely, I'd love to be in that. Number 6. When it comes to adaptations, what's your preferred medium? And now this is interesting because in the past I probably would have said movie because, movies were what got the big budget. That was kind of the way to go with it. But with the rise of like high budget TV shows, I kind of think that is the best way to go. Just because you get to really explore a lot more. I have really high hopes for how the Wheel of Time show is going to turn out. And there's a lot of TV shows anymore that get bigger budgets. You can really, really go in depth. And so since most of what I read is epic fantasy, if you're going to adapt epic fantasy, a TV show probably works better than a movie. I think that's one of the big issues that some adaptations had in the past, or reason things didn't take off, is because when you try to make a movie out of a book that has so much detail, you're going to have to leave things out. You're probably going to have to change things to make it fit. So I think the TV show mold works pretty well for that. Number 7, I had kind of a hard time thinking of, but that's what would you change if you could about a recent adaptation? And I was trying to think, and the only thing I thought of is I recently, and it's not that recent, there's a few seasons, but I recently tried out the American Gods TV show because I liked the book American Gods, and it just felt very, very different. And I know Neil Gaiman even worked on the show, so it's not like it was some like ruined version. I think a lot of the changes probably were things that he endorsed or even thought up. But it just felt so very different. And so I didn't really feel like connected to it from the beginning, and it was just really confusingly done. Even for me who had read the book and knew kind of some of the stuff going on, just the way it was done was really, really confusing. So making it feel a little bit more like the book and just making it less like convoluted, I think is the thing that I probably would have changed about that, but I never finished watching it. All right, number 8. What's an adaptation that you think was better than the book? And that's a tough one because usually the book tends to be better. But I think for me, the one I definitely have to go with is The Princess Bride, because I have read the book not in a really long time. And it's a fun book too, but I absolutely prefer watching the movie. The movie cut out a lot of the extraneous stuff with it, but just told the story in a great way. It was cast perfectly. I love that movie so much, and I definitely would rather watch that movie than read the book if I had to choose. I don't have a problem with the book either, but that's, I think, one of the rare exceptions to the rule. Granted, the guy that wrote the book also wrote the screenplay, so that probably helped as well. It was still completely his vision, just in a format for a movie, and that helped, I think. But man, I love that movie. All right, number 9 is, what adaptation do you like that most people don't? So I did immediately think I had to think really hard about this, actually, to try to say something different than the Hobbit movies, because that's what Walker had done in his tag, and I didn't want to copy him, but I do honestly, I liked the Hobbit movies. They did change a lot, and there were some cheesy elements, and it was definitely longer than it needed to be, but they were fun. They were entertaining. I think that's what they were going for, and I think it worked. I enjoyed them. I liked a lot of the casting, but I wanted to go with something different, so I thought really hard about it. And I don't know how many people even remember this because it was very unpopular. I don't think it did well critically or with fans of the source material. But the television show Legend of the Seeker, which is based off of Good Kind's books. And I have actually never read the books yet still. I haven't. I have a copy of Wizard's First Rule that I'll probably eventually read, but I'm familiar with so much that happened, and I heard passages on audio and stuff years and years ago. I've just never really had a huge interest in reading them, but I watched the show when it was out, and I actually wasn't that bad. I wasn't like in love with the show, but I did generally like that show, despite most people not, and despite it being pretty cheesy. But I figured there is a different answer that's not saying the Hobbit movies, so that's what I will go with. So that's this tag. The last one is just tagging other people. I usually don't tag people. So especially since multiple people I would have tagged, one tagged me and the other one was tagged by Walker. So I won't do tagging anybody else. If you're watching this, like this idea, definitely make sure to do it and let me know if you do, because I always like to see what other people answer for the same questions. So definitely feel free to consider yourself tagged if you are watching this. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. And of course, check the link in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord. As well as if you would like to see more of my content, make sure to subscribe.